Hey, welcome to the Perspective today. We are starting an interesting week as we're talking about everything related to love and relationships. So regardless of where you're at, we've got a panel of experts and emerging amateurs that are going to be sharing with us today. And I want to welcome Terrie. We've been married for 42 years, haven't we?
We have, that's right. You've got it right.
Yeah,
Taken a while to get that
and
up.
we want to welcome Julie. She's chiming
Hi.
in from Florida today, so that's pretty cool. Wish we were there with you.
Wish you were here too. Listen, I want to jump in and say, Terrie, it's so wonderful to have you with us today. And what's it like living with Mike?
It's always an experience and excitement. Never know what's going to go on. Lots
Julie,
of things happening.
Julie, this could be the last time that you co-host with me for asking a question like that. I mean, let's,
Uh-oh.
like, how real do we got to be? What's it like living with Tor? So
Well,
he should be on the show today. How long have you guys been married?
34 years.
And
And
got
you?
42.
42? Yeah.
Yep.
So it's hard to believe. I think I robbed the cradle, or it's the other way around. Normally I have that lame joke. But Julie,
We talk about it's one thing to be married, but it's another thing to be married with children. And you two, you've got it down. You've had 5 children, 5 beautiful girls. How have you survived each stage and kept connected to each other?
well, I'm not sure how well we survived. It's just an ongoing experience, and now they're adult kids, so it's all kind of fun as well. We have granddaughters, and well, Terrie, how have we survived?
Well, I think we just had to work at it together. There's always something happening, right? It gets busy and you learn to work at things together.
Yeah, I think flexibility is the key. We're going to talk a little bit about that and communicating, trying to, just help each other to understand where you're at. And sometimes those honest moments need to happen even more often. What about you, Julie?
Yes, I completely agree. But listen, we're going to be having some great guests with us today. Kendal and Denver Fontaine will be with us right after the break.
Hey, welcome today again to The Perspective. I want to especially welcome Denver and Kendal Fontaine. Welcome, you guys.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, Denver, I know you a little bit. I know Kendal a lot because I guess you could say, Terrie, she's kind of like a 6th daughter at our
I
house.
think we have 6 now.
I'm honored. I'm so honored.
And it seems like every season of our life, there's an extra woman that comes along, and we kind of adopt her as one of our daughters for a while. And but hey, we're going to talk about marriage today. How long have you guys been married?
4 years.
Did he get the right answer, Kendal?
Yeah, he did. He
I'm
did.
like,
He's like, wait a second. Yeah, we're coming up on our anniversary
Yeah.
very soon. So.
And
The thing is, does he know the date of it?
Ooh. Do you?
well, yeah. I'm like, September 14th. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just throw out, I'm going to lob an easy one. What was one of the biggest surprises to you guys when you got married? Like, just everything seems to be always going to be perfect, and then suddenly you're going to get married, and you got married. What was one of your biggest surprises?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot in marriage that you kind of get surprised on. And obviously, as a Christian couple, we know that God comes first, but I think it's easy in society to kind of start thinking that this person is what's going to fill you up in your whole life. And I think when I went into our marriage without knowing it subconsciously, I kind of expected him to just make me happy in every way. And he does make me very happy, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it has to come through Christ and our relationship with him. So that was a process for me to work through, and not putting our relationship above my relationship with God.
Okay, that's pretty good. Denver, we're going to hear from you in a second, but I'm going to ask Terrie, what was one of the biggest surprises in, being married to me? Like, I don't know, should I even ask this question?
I think I thought maybe, Mike, you were going to be my, what is that? On the horse?
The knight.
The knight.
And I didn't?
No, sorry.
Oh, shoot.
It wasn't quite like that.
No
He was
shining
going to
armor.
ride in on that horse, right? In the shining armor.
But one
Yep.
of the things that saved us is I didn't ride it on a horse, but after I think daughter number 4, I started to ride motorcycles. And that became a great way for us to get away and just to talk.
It was a good, you need that time, right? So you're going to find that out with children too, just to get away and
Yeah.
be together.
I think that sometimes we get so busy with, whether you're starting your career, and I was pastoring and leading a church, and then all of a sudden there was a kid that came along, and then another one, and
And then another one.
I couldn't figure out where they were coming from, what happened, but and then suddenly you got to say, okay, we got to find time because the years just slip by so quickly.
They
Yeah.
say that all the time, and it is very true. Time just flies, and you need time together.
So you've got an exciting announcement as well, don't you?
We do. Yeah, we're having a baby boy in June. So we're
Congratulations.
thank you. We're about to enter that season. So it's always great to have advice because as much as you can prepare yourself, you don't really know until you're in it. So it's great advice. And that's something that we obviously want to prioritize is spending time alone together as well.
Well, Denver, I can give you some advice. Get as much sleep now as you can, and then I'll talk to you in
try.
20 years. But what do you guys like to do together? You guys are really health nuts, aren't you? Like you do a lot of exercising, working out, and stuff like that. Tell us about that. How has that worked as a couple?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we're health nuts. I mean, I ate about 3 strips of bacon just before I got on this call. But
Good.
one of the things we've enjoyed is really being together when we did our runs together. So we've had long hours and hours outside running, and we got to pray together. We got to talk about what's going on and just spend that quality time. So it's going to be harder when the baby comes, but it's something that we've always valued.
Well, I think to do that and to carry that out is important. And Terrie, I'm thinking about the last 42 years. We've had to adjust many, many times, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
A lot of different projects that kind of preoccupied us. Too many home renovations.
A lot of home renovations,
Yeah.
a lot of time just having to be able to find time to sit and to talk. Eye contact is huge, right? We needed to just,
Yeah, we needed to do that.
we needed to spend that time.
And I think one of the interesting things for us, especially during COVID, is we have started to play a lot of games. And it is frustrating. Terrie seems to win more than me. And I don't know if you're cheating a little bit playing cards, but sometimes that happens. What do you guys have been doing besides running to spend time to grow together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of things that we like to do is we play this question game where I just look up all these random questions online to ask that are fun to ask your spouse. And so I think we're always trying to grow and learn more about each other. And obviously, like we've said, continuing our relationship with Christ and growing together spiritually is huge too. But yeah, I think just always learning about each other and growing because we're all changing. We're all continuing to grow into the people we are. So I think just being able to stay on the same page and grow together has been big for us.
I think that's huge, what Kendall's saying, growing together. I like to read books, but I like to read books at Mike
Out loud.
out loud. So he might be just,
And it bugs me.
he's just sitting there and all of a sudden I'm reading and I say to him, hey, you got to hear this. And I can sort of see his, oh, okay, let's do that. So then I start reading at him, then I ask him questions.
But that often comes out in a talk that I give or something like that, and I am grateful.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that has helped us, and I'm going to be talking more about communicating today, is I find you have to be intentional and you have to work hard at it and admitting where there is a breakdown. And if you're not, setting aside the time, but also saying, hey, we've got a problem, there's an elephant in the room, we got to talk about it. Have you experienced that yet in the first 4 years of marriage?
Yeah,
Have we?
no, yeah, it takes effort. It takes intentionality for sure to say, we're going to tackle this problem or this conversation head on instead of ignoring it, pushing it under the carpet, because it's just going to produce a healthier, more vibrant relationship for sure.
And good words, good words. Julie's going to come back and she's going to pick on you guys a little bit with some tough questions. But I just want to say something about the whole area of communication. As we're doing this whole series on love and relationships, there's not a lot of love in our country right now. Matter of fact, past Saturday, the Toronto Star talked about the Great Divide. Canada is in crisis. And as we're thinking about the truckers' convoy and what is being said, very few, I think, media outlets are actually speaking life into the situation. I want to encourage our political leaders to communicate, to talk. I think we have to watch the rhetoric that we're using, that we don't marginalize people, regardless of what their beliefs. We can talk about people being in a minority and that we should just push them away. But Canada has a record of being a country that listens to people who are in a minority. And yet many people are saying today that those who are part of the convoy that has gone to Ottawa and gone to many other cities across Canada, it's not about masking or vaccination. It's about the conversation that people want to have regarding our freedom. Is it being taken away? And let me encourage each of us to do our part to have open dialogue and conversation, to hear each other. Because what is important in a marriage is also important if our leaders are going to lead well in our country. It's time for us to speak up, but it's also time for us to listen up. We'll be right back.
Here's Vian King with today's Shine FM Moment of Hope.
A life-altering disability, infidelity, and trapped in a prison of fear. Those were only a few of my giants. What are yours? People see a happy marriage, a crown, a title as Miss Wheelchair Canada, but not understand the giants I've battled. I know what it is to be consumed with fear and struggling to find hope. How easy do you think it was for me to walk through infidelity with my husband?
So great to have you with us, Kendal and Denver. And I wanted to start with the very popular 5 love languages by Gary Chapman that many people have read. And it's been a very helpful tool to discover that, we don't always give and receive love the same way. And I was wondering, in your 4 years of marriage, have you figured out how each other gives and receives love yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's actually kind of a funny story. So when we started dating, I hadn't figured out his love language, but I knew obviously what mine were. So I would send him like the longest text, like being like, "Oh, I appreciate you so much. I really am enjoying our relationship," and all this stuff. And he would always respond with "thanks," or just like the text. I just remember I was so hurt by that. But it took us some time, but we definitely have learned how to love each other in those ways. And I think that does change too. Like I think even some of mine have kind of changed as we've continued to grow in marriage, and probably will when the baby comes, it might change as well. So yeah, I think we've narrowed it down at least.
I know for us, we would also do the personality test every couple of years. My husband and I, Tor and I, would do that. And it was interesting to see over time how we would kind of change over the years as we've been together and as we would journey through life, that even how we responded to each other. And sometimes we'd even do the personality test on each other to see how we viewed each other, which is really daring if you don't want to start an argument, or you got to be really, open and honest, and then, make sure the gloves are off, But I wanted to ask you, share with us one special thing your spouse has done for you that has really touched you. I thought that'd be an interesting question.
Yeah, Kendall's done a lot of things, but I think the thing that she keeps on doing that I appreciate so much is letting me spend time either with my guy friends or alone, because I need that time to rejuvenate because I'm an introvert. So she's really been amazing at saying like, "Hey, I want to spend a ton of time with you, write you all these texts, blah, blah, blah." But she lets me spend some time alone. And that in turn, makes our love grow deeper for sure.
Wow. How about you, Kendal?
Yeah, well, mine's a little more tangible. So it was 2 Christmases ago. I'd been wanting a cat for so long. And I always was begging him to get me a cat. And he always said that he didn't want a cat. And for Christmas, he surprised me with a little kitten. And it was the best gift ever. And I think normal people would be like, "Oh, it's not that great." But if you know me, I really love my cat.
Yeah.
It is interesting when we truly become intentional about learning what really brings joy to our spouse. And if it's totally something that doesn't matter to us, but if it makes that big of a difference to them, and we do it and we see how much our spouse is blessed by it, we really do grow, and we're able to feel that love and satisfaction that I did something that really mattered to them. On another note, I wanted to talk about accountability. Accountability is something of incredible value and sorely lacking actually today in society, and I'm sure you agree. But how do you choose to be accountable to your spouse? Let's start with Denver.
Yeah. I think accountability is very important. I would agree.
Mhm.
Having those relationships in your life that you're being truthful and honest with, especially with your spouse. So I think it's more of opening that conversation, opening that door, and having a constant dialogue. I find I'm not as open as like once a month we check in, see how we're doing in this area that you're struggling with, rather than keeping the conversation going, sitting down for dinners, making that time available to check in to see how your heart's doing, how your walk with Jesus is going, because we always come back to that. Because if your walk with God in the morning, you're not doing your devotions, you're not spending time with him, the other areas of your life are going to be symptomatic when the heart issue is where you really need to focus your time at.
Oh, that's so true. Kendall, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, you kind of nailed it, but yeah, no, I agree with that too. And I just think it's important to have kind of just boundaries as a couple of like what we're comfortable with, even just simple things of I would never go hang out with someone of the opposite sex, just us two. Just even like little things like that. I think we just know that and we trust each other and respect each other.
Mhm.
But we also, like we said, always keep the communication open. So we're talking about it. It's not like a once a year conversation. We're just constantly making sure that we're on the same page and growing.
That was just fantastic. And another area is, and we've all pretty much been guilty of it, I know I have been, is there have been times when, we take our spouses for granted. How do you try not to do that? Who wants to start with that one?
Let me go first. No. Not take her for granted. I mean, you try to really think back and just understand what she's doing to sacrifice each day, because I think when you really love someone, you're sacrificing without the expectation of receiving appreciation and recognition. So she does a lot of that stuff constantly. And so I think it's just understanding and pulling back and taking a second to understand what she's doing each and every day for me, which is incredible.
Oh,
Kendall. Yeah, no, I would say the same too. And I think sometimes, and I think just having a grateful heart in general just makes a big difference on your life. It's so easy to pinpoint certain things, but really when you just look back and look at our life of how God's blessed us in so many ways, I think it's almost impossible to take them for granted, because I would be so sad without him in my life. And so I think, yeah, just being grateful for everything in life too just makes a big difference.
Oh, so true. I want to bring back Terry and Mike, and I know they want to share in.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
So I wanted to ask you guys a question, because you guys have a lot longer of marriage under your belt. But how would you guys say that you've gotten through those hard times in your marriage?
Well, let me jump in. First of all, I think, like you guys have said, it's been our faith in God that's kept us together, because many times when things attack you from the outside, it's easy to turn against the one that you love the most. And so prayer, talking things through. But Terry has been an amazing, amazing person. She does so many little things each day to encourage me. Random gifts. Sometimes she'll put a love note in my sandwich. I've bitten in. I'm surprised I still have my teeth from biting in. One day she put a big billboard outside where I worked. It was my birthday. She filled my office with balloons. And I remember my boss saying, "Wow, you really have someone who loves you." So that's been an ongoing story. Terry, what about you?
Well, I think for us, with the 5 children, I was always amazed that Mike would take them. He would take all the girls and even a baby. And of course, you have to go where a man likes to go. He would go to Canadian Tire. He'd put them in a cart, in one of the shopping carts, and away they all went. He spent time with the girls. We'd get an old boat, and he'd spend time just being with them in the boat. He did all kinds of things like that. The kids were important to him. And for me, I think one of the things that was really interesting was I've always when you're a mom, what do you drive? A van. We always had a van. Had to put all the kids in it. So I know for him, one of the things he did for me was he made sure that I had a special vehicle that I've always wanted. So I think I've kind of gone off the track here, but I'm going to tell you a few things that Mike likes to do. And so he bought me a convertible. So I now have a nice convertible. In the summer, I can get in it and enjoy just the sun and enjoy just that on my own time.
Make up for 35 years of van life. Were you going to say something, Denver?
Sorry, no, I was just going to say that's super helpful. And it's always nice to hear through other marriages, and especially after having 5 girls, which is amazing, just to see how solid and great your marriage is as well.
You know what? You have to choose to adjust. And we've had to adjust constantly. And you get in a groove, and sometimes after 3 months, something changes. And you can either say, I'm going to accept it, or I'm going to walk away from it. We're going to talk more about that in a couple moments as I teach from God's Word on some of the principles of communicating that I believe are going to help you make the best of the situation that you're in right now.
Once I started fighting with God's strength, the battles that nearly destroyed me actually gave me this contagious courage that has unlocked a new level of joy and freedom I didn't know existed. Did you know that every giant you face is an opportunity for an even bigger victory? What giants are you facing right now? Today, I challenge you to look at the giants in your path through God's strength and power, not your own.
You know, someone once said that marriages are made in heaven, but that is not true. Marriages are made here on earth. They come together in little kits, and we have to figure out how to put them together. We can choose either to do it in our strength or with God's strength. You've been listening to Kendal and Denver as they've shared a bit of their journey, and Terrie and myself as we have recognized more than anything else that we need the presence of Jesus in our relationship. You know, as we look to Him for our help and our source, we realize that how we communicate is equally important as what we communicate. And more often than not, it seems that when we talk about communicating in marriage, it can be a very delicate subject. We think we're being crystal clear, and the other person is saying it's all muddled. It is all garbled. I think what we're seeing nationally right now in Canada is something that gives us an insight into the reality of when people communicate poorly or when they communicate clearly. And as I mentioned about the trucker convoy, I think what people are saying is that we want to be heard. People on both sides of the fence saying, can we have opportunity to dialogue and speak at the table? But when you don't give the opportunity to dialogue, what happens is that things become explosive. And we're seeing that in the country. It's also likely what could be happening in your relationship. I hope not, but if it is, then work with me on some of these things, because frustration typically grows out of poor communication skills, which leads to conflict. Now, I've discovered this, that there are often 3 common distress signals that get put out, you know, kind of like the SOS in a relationship. Could this be you? Well, then listen in on what they might be. So the first of the SOS is when people try to communicate, it's what I call smoke 'em. It's kind of like dropping in the first punch and getting the first jab in. When you get frustrated, it's easy just to shoot your mouth off and to say things. And generally in any relationship, there's one person who is more fluent in communicating than the other person. And sometimes the other person is very passive, and when everything builds up, they do explode. But more often than not, there's a personality that always wants to get the first shot in. And if you're that person, know that oftentimes you are silencing your partner because of the way that you approach. Sometimes we send out a distress signal because people are obnoxious. And being obnoxious is when you become sarcastic. Oh, you always say this. You always do that. And when will you ever change? And those kind of words, what it does is that it fuels a negative environment for your relationship to flourish. And hey, we all want it to flourish. And rather than thinking, what does the other person need to change? What is it that I need to change? And then, of course, one of the biggest problems, we hear about it, we laugh about it, especially with guys, is the silent treatment. You know, many times we're like the little kids when they come home from school and we say, "What did you learn today?" And they say, "Nothing." And many times when we come home, we just want to chill out as guys and we don't want to communicate. Whereas our wives, typically about 80% of women versus men, are just wired to naturally communicate and say, "Fill me in on all the details." And as a guy, we can just say, "I'm just overwhelmed with that." But your silence is not golden. You can talk, you can communicate. You do it in your line of work, with your friends, with your buddies. You can do it with your spouse. So here's some things for communicating that will help you. First of all, speak up. You know, silence is not golden. You need to speak up. You need to speak clearly without yelling. And saying, by clearly, I mean, are you communicating the intent of your heart? And then here's something else. Back in the day, way back, people used to collect stamps. You collect so many stamps and you get a discount on your food. It's kind of like we go through the coffee lineup at a Tim's or a Starbucks and we get rewards and finally we get a free one. Many times in a relationship, people collect emotional trading stamps. And when things blow up, they want to come back with all the verbal garbage from the last 3 or 5 or 7 months, and we just want to dump it on our partner because we've had all this stuff building up. You can't keep doing that. And then remember this, if you're going to deal with these difficult issues, prepare the setting for disagreement and talk about the issue itself. Make sure you're not pointing at the person that you profess to love, but you're dealing with the issue. Paul wrote these words, "Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up." Today, it's an opportunity to speak life into that person that you profess is so special to you.
Mike, it's been commonly said, if you want a beautiful garden, you have to take care of it. You have to tend to it. And we know that that's what we have to do with marriage. Terrie, what are your thoughts?
You have to keep working at it. It's not something that just happens overnight. It's constantly talking, communicating, praying, and just being there for each other.
Yeah, those are good reminders, and I need to hear them as much as anyone else. I want to encourage you to press on in your relationship today. Here at The Perspective, we're going to spend the whole week talking to you about how to make your marriage not just a good thing, but a great experience. Why don't you go to our website, check us out, because we have a PDF we want to give to you every day of this week to help you with communicating, dealing with conflict, how to be a better listener, even one on sexual intimacy. There's things to help you. As we go through this week, we want to share those things with you. Thanks and have a great day.